Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started if everybody's ready. So, thank you so much. Good afternoon. Um, Thanks for joining us for the Arts Management Program's alumni panel discussion for the Bachelor of Arts in Arts Management. My name is Simone Liberty, and I'm a current graduate assistant for the Arts Management Program. And I'm so glad that you're able to join us today. So please keep yourselves on mute for the attendees during the panel discussion. Also, feel free to drop any questions that you have for the panelists in the chat, and they'll be addressed in the Q&A session during this event. I would like to absolutely thank our panelists for taking the time today to be with us. We have with us Josh Bristow, a 2019 graduate, Kiana Kim, a 2015 graduate, Blakely Little, a 2014 graduate, and Maria Carrillo Marquina, a 2019 graduate. And with this, I'd like to let them introduce themselves and tell us just a little bit about what they're doing currently, current work positions, academic experiences, art projects. Is there any one of you that would like to go first?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kiana Kim. I'm the Director of Production at the Charleston Gilliard Center, which is right down the street from the college. I oversee all of our events on the performance hall side and in the exhibition hall that we have here, mainly front of house, security, event logistics, that kind of stuff. I've been here for about almost 6 years, so since it reopened. And I also just started my graduate work at the Citadel for an MBA. So that's what I'm currently doing.
I'll go next. My name is Joshua Bristow. My pronouns are he, him. I am a 2019 graduate of the Arts Management Program with a minor in theater. I also dabbled in dance from time to time during my 4 years. And yeah, now I work as a development and marketing associate for an organization called The Yard, which is based in Martha's Vineyard, which is an island off the coast of Eastern Massachusetts. So it's a dance residency, education, and performance platform. So working with New York and New England international based artists and also local artists on the island. So it's a little bit of what I do.
I can go next. My name is Maria. I'm also a 2019 graduate from the Arts Management Program, and I also graduated from the Art History program as well. I spent the last year working at the Dallas Museum of Art as the Interpretation and Design Fellow there for a year, and I've recently started my graduate degree in art history at the University of Delaware, doing my master's there. So that's what I'm currently doing coursework there.
And I'm Blakely Little, and I graduated from College Charleston in 2014. I was an arts management major with a minor in studio art, and about 2 years after graduating, I was able to go full-time as an artist, and that's what I'm doing still. I'm in my studio, I paint and make art and products, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you, guys. So we have a broad array of people here, and I'm wondering if you all could share a little bit about what your path was post-graduation. As we all know, that's not a very linear track.
Sure, I'll start. Yes, not linear for sure. After I graduated, I actually worked 4 part-time jobs. 6 months after I graduated, I was the orchestra manager at the College of Charleston. I was a marketing manager with the CSO, a marketing manager with Footlight Theater, which is another small resident theater downtown. And I had my packaging and shipping job that I've had throughout college. So there are definitely times where, I just felt discouraged and disappointed, especially when I compared myself to others and just thought, when am I ever going to make it? When am I ever going to get a full-time job? But, I did that for about 6 months after graduating. And then I got a call from the Charleston Gilliard Center. and I've been there ever since. So definitely not linear, but you can never go backwards. You can only go forwards.
My path. All throughout my last semester of my senior year, I was working at Spoleto Festival USA as a special events intern. And I graduated. I started the 2019 festival the next day. And then I did that every day for 3.5 weeks. And then 2 days later, I moved up to Martha's Vineyard. I had gotten a job offer the day before graduation. So like, yeah, it was day after day after day. And then I just packed my entire life and moved up here and got a winter coat. And I've been here ever since.
Yeah, I graduated in 2019, and up until graduation, I think the last couple of weeks, I still hadn't landed a job, actually. It's kind of tricky in the arts. Everything seems to be moving so slowly, but also so quickly, both at the same time. And luckily, I had landed a position to work at the Dallas Museum of Art. It was a temporary position, so just a year-long position at the museum, working in design and interpretation. So something kind of not what you would think is a typical museum job, which was exciting to kind of get to see a different angle of the arts and art museums. And then after that, since it ended in May of 2020, I kind of also had to pick up a part-time job before I started my graduate career in August. So very similar to kind of a lot of folks where you're doing something for a year, have to pivot a little bit, maybe pick up something on the side before you can get back on track. It's very normal to kind of be in that hustle and have a lot of side things to keep you going.
Yeah, I feel like every movie I ever saw was like, and then I dropped all my side jobs and just went for it and got my dream job, and it was crazy. And I'm like, that's not real life. Like, we have to pay bills and pay rent. And so my journey was similar. So I sort of had the arts management business side and then the studio art side, the creative side. And I was doing wedding design. So I was doing floral arrangements for weddings and helping pick colors and for all kinds of events all over Charleston. It was awesome. And then slowly but surely, I mean, I would paint at night and on the weekends. And I started to gain a little bit of following, have a show here, get a couple paintings sold here. And eventually, after about a year of that, I went part-time doing the floral and event design business and part-time painting. And then eventually was able to go full-time with painting. But I just think that, I mean, there's just no shame in having the job that like pushes you towards the dream job. Like, so many people want to just take that leap. And if you can afford to do that, then totally go for it. But there's a lot more stories out there like me that I'm like, I'm slowly inching towards the dream job.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And I love what you said about inching towards the dream job instead of jumping in. But by all means, obviously, we all want to get to that point. So next question would be, can you all give some general advice for transitioning out of college and into like this work-life balance? So you don't have classes anymore, or maybe you're pursuing a master's degree, but what's kind of like, just what do the next couple of weeks or months after graduation look like, and what advice could you give?
So I think probably my biggest piece of advice for y'all is just to stay focused and to not compare yourself to others. Everyone is on their own path. No one is the same. And just remember, why you're in college right now. Of course, you're there for the great experiences and making friends, but you're also there to get, that dream job. And, you may want to take, a couple months off, a year off to travel and do all these things. And that's perfectly fine if you have the means to do so. But I would highly encourage all of you guys just to solidify these connections with, dream jobs or the jobs to get you to that dream job way before you graduate. So, I mean, whether it's that senior year or even years before, solidifying that relationship through volunteerism or interning there and just building that relationship with them. So when you do graduate and you do want to take some time off again, which is a perfectly acceptable decision, they will most likely accommodate that. They'll say, you worked hard these past 4 years, you deserve to have a month off. And you know what, we're going to be here when you're done. But that, doesn't really happen until you make that connection and you make that bond with people. Secondly, I think, in regards to just work-life balance, I feel like, we're seeing this shift in culture, right? Where, at first it's always been what the employee can do for the organization and what the employee can do for your company. But now it's becoming what your company can do for you. As more studies come out with, greater work-life balance, is correlated with higher levels of motivation and higher levels of productivity. More companies are seeing just the greater need to encourage work-life balance. So I know there's that pressure to just work your hardest and possibly burn out just to make, a good impression. And it is important to make a good impression, but, more and more organizations don't want you to burn out. They want you to have a work-life balance and they want you to have, peace. So then you can, so then you can be successful in your job.
I'll echo that and say that if the organization isn't people first, I think you should take note of that if you're looking into that organization or looking to connect with them some kind of way. As a person who jumped straight from school and then right into a full-time job, I was like, wow, I really need to take a breath. I went from one festival to the other, working 60 to 80-hour weeks throughout a summer. And come September, I was incredibly burnt out. So, it's real. When I first got here, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do in the evening. I was like, do I watch TV forever? Do I cook? How do I make friends? How do I connect? Everyone was through school or like my extracurriculars. So I think it just takes time and just breathe. Things will align and to network. Every internship or opportunity that I had presented another one because of it. And people are happy to share what you do and your work and your worth. So I think it will just come in time.
Yeah, I can only echo what has already been said. You guys have made really good points. That was a hard thing when I was working, even though I only worked for a brief amount of time, figuring out what to do at the end of the day was kind of weird, was kind of strange after having so much freedom, but then also working for the majority of the day. So I would say find things that make you genuinely happy. And we're all in arts management, which means we all most likely have an artistic side to us. So remember that that's kind of why you got into this field, hone in on your practice and remember that, because I think that's very important to kind of preserve and take care of yourself as well. Yeah, and to, as Joshua said, to keep connections with mentors, to keep connections with your undergrad institution here at CFC. There's some amazing folks here, and opportunities will present themselves for sure. So just taking care of yourself and really making sure you know what your values are and what you want from an institution and kind of how to take care of yourself is, I think, a very important thing to do.
Yeah, and to kind of go off of that, I remember being told, like, keep connections with mentors, keep connections with your teachers. And I remember asking, like, how do I do that? What do I say? And I loved the practical advice I got was like, if you're out in the world and you're seeing an art exhibit and it reminds you of like one of your old professors, take pictures and email it to them. If you see an article that reminds you of an organization you worked for or volunteered for, email that to them and say, I was thinking about you, this reminded me of you, hope you're doing well, stuff like that. Because like those are, it might seem obvious now that I'm saying it, but I remember being like, I want to keep in touch with my professors and the people I've worked with, but I feel awkward just being like, hi, it's me again. So yeah, I love that idea of just kind of wherever you are, there's art things going on, and those are things that you can kind of share back with your mentors and professors and the places you've worked. And then the other thing I'd say is, and I think somebody said this, but it's like the first time in your life that you're kind of like everybody's graduating and going in different directions. Like you've done kindergarten to elementary school to middle school to high school to college, and now it's like a free-for-all. And so like some people are like moving to a big city and have like a big corporate job, and some people are nannying and don't have a job, and some people are getting married, and some people are like, I'm so single, and it just feels insane. It feels completely insane. So I would say just like keep in mind that of course it feels weird that everybody's going in different directions, because it's the first time in your life that this is happening. So it feels strange. But if you can stay in your lane and, obviously you want to be in your friends' lives and support them and celebrate them, but stay in your lane and sort of like figure out the direction you want to go in and quit comparing yourself to everyone else. Because the thing that's like hard for me is sometimes some days I'll look at other people's artwork and I'm totally inspired. And then some days I look at other people's artwork and I hate myself. And so I feel like those are the days where I have to remind myself, stay in my lane. Like I have a direction, I have goals, I know what I'm good at. And I kind of have to put the blinders on a little bit so that I don't get down on myself. So yeah, just some things to keep in mind.
I love all of your responses to that question. And I was looking at the next question that I had, and it's very similar, but I'm wondering, so here's the question. What have you done between jobs, or how do you manage career and life transitions? I know that we kind of touched on that a little bit. I'm wondering if any of you have some additional like very practical tips. Josh, you were like, what do I do in the evenings? Do I cook? Or like, have you all found kind of like an outlet? And as arts managers, maybe this is artwork that you turn to or something different. But I'd just be interested to see if anything has kind of helped you through awkward transitions.
I can speak to this. I was actually furloughed from April to June, of 2020. So yeah, as soon as the pandemic hit, arts organizations, and more specifically performing arts organizations, like it was mayhem, just like everything else. Staffs were cut, which included me. And so I was like, oh, my life is over. What's happening? What have I done? And for some reason, I still continued to work. I was like, okay, well, I know I'm going to come back. So like, I still have access to files. I'm going to work on budgets. I'm going to work on this. I'm going to work on this, which I thought was a really bad idea. I just decided to rest and, find support, whether that was my family, whether that was from the government or of any kind. And the one thing I did was talk to a lot of people in my network of like, hey, this has happened. Is it happening to you? Let's resource share. Let's just like grab a coffee or a drink, depending on your age, over Zoom, and really just like, let's connect. Everyone's going through the exact same thing, whether it's depressing or just really, morbid. So let's just like keep in touch. And through that, I came back to work, and now I also have another job as a side gig. I'm like kind of like a consultant, which came through me continuing my network when I didn't have to work. So I don't know how to turn my work brain off, if you haven't been able to tell. But what was really good about that was like, I really still kept these branches of people, wherever they were. And it has really worked in my favor. I do a lot of dancing on the beach now too, which I don't know if that really is helpful.
I always joke, I feel like because of understanding creativity, the class from arts management, that I, figured out so many traits about myself. And so one of the things is that I'm an extrovert. And so when I started painting, I was alone and I hated my paintings because I was like very much alone and in my own head. And so I would go for walks where I would like see the people, is what I would call them, my see the people walks, because I just wanted to walk on Charleston, like see the people. Like I need to know that like there's a world out there and like things are going on. And so I would say like through transitions, like figuring out like what are the small things that you can do that like keep you in a really good mental health space. Because that, like if your mental health isn't a priority, then that's where like transitions can get extra scary. But if you know you're going through a challenging time and you're like, okay, self, like let's talk about this. Let's figure out some things that you're going to kind of force yourself to do, like going on see the people walks, then like you'll start to feel better. And then, you know, I think it's just like one little thing that helped me remember like this is who I am and this is how I can take care of myself.
I love that, Blakely. I think it's to just reiterate what you just said. It's so important just to figure out what's most important to you, what are your strongest needs, and to continually assess that, you know, as you get older. You know, the things I valued when I first graduated at, I don't know how old I was, 22, 23, is different than what I value today. So just to make sure to check in with yourself consistently and to assess, you know, is what I'm doing lining up with who I am today and what I value and what I need. I think today, and in these past few years, for me, some of my most important needs, you know, has been financial security, work-life balance, and opportunities for professional development. And, you know, every year that I'm here at the Gilliard, I think about, is this company aligning with what I want and what I need in my life right now? And if it doesn't, then that's a sign that maybe I need to, you know, shift away from these things, shift away from this company and, you know, start looking at other jobs. But I will say that in these past few years, we've all gone through COVID and this transition that we're in right now. And I'm very grateful that the Gilliard Center has been able to supply all these needs for me right now. So yeah, that's the advice I have.
I don't know that I have much more to add. I think what everyone has said so far sums up a lot of the things that I was thinking about. And yeah, I ended up finishing my job at the Dallas Museum of Art at the end of May, so right in the midst of the beginning of the pandemic. And so that's one of the main reasons why I decided to go into grad school as a safety, because there were no jobs available. Everyone was getting laid off or furloughed. And so I entered the workforce again in a very kind of grisly time. So I'll be really transparent with that. I used graduate school as kind of a safe haven to shield me from some of the from the lack of jobs. But I think something that, as folks have kind of already stated, is that it's made me really reflect on the values that I want when I finish my degree, my master's, and go back into the workforce and see and think really critically if the institution's values line up with my own. I think that's something that has become really transparent recently, is to see how they've been treating, how certain institutions, and I'm talking about museums and art institutions in that way, because that's my own personal field, how they've been treating their staff and their employees who has been getting furloughed or laid off first. I think it's something very important to see, and just their overall general culture. And I think that goes kind of in tandem with these ideas of taking care of yourself and kind of figuring out what your values are, and how some folks have been saying they've been cooking more, or they've been taking walks to see the people, to remind them the happiness and the joy that they really value, and that's really important for them. And so I think to have that same kind of criteria for when you go into the job market, as hard as it might be, I know it's a privilege not everyone can have, to kind of negotiate that. But I think it'll help you transition between jobs better, because you'll want to go and work for that institution more.
Thanks, guys. So next question, you guys are doing such a good job with like bridging into my next questions, because the next one was about COVID and job shifts or lack of jobs, relevant pivots. And So I was going to ask, can you speak to the hardships pandemic on your work? And Josh, you shared that you were furloughed, and Maria, you shared that going into grad school was kind of like a safety net for you, a good safety net, by the way. And Kiana and I worked together at the Gilliard Center, so I know that the Gilliard had to close to the public, but was still very much virtually operational. And I know that you've been in the office for most of the year. But so all this to be said, as we're kind of moving out of the pandemic, can you talk about the general experiences that you had during 2020 and anything positive that you're taking forward with you?
So I had a very interesting year. I hired my first employee in January of 2020. So that was terrifying. And I remember when March hit, I said to her, listen, I have no clue how this is going to go. I have no clue, what this is going to look like. And we're going to try and make this work for as long as we can and the best that we can, but I have no clue what it's going to look like. And I don't think anyone did, but what I did realize is essentially my artwork still sold and things actually were okay, which I was so grateful for. But there was such an emphasis on home and your home and making those changes to it that because you're there all the time. And so I think that that's one thing that I know it's like kind of minor, but I am having like a shift in my head of these pieces really, usually I just paint what I want to paint and then sell them. But these pieces are really going in people's homes and changing their environment. And so how can I make that more personal, and how can I make these paintings connect to people more? And so that is sort of an emphasis that we're using as a team to head into 2021. But otherwise, I, again, felt incredibly lucky because I do think that people were excited to buy artwork because they wanted to make a shift in their home and make it feel like it reflected them.
So for me and Simone, like she said, we had to shut our doors, right in the middle of our spring season. We had so many shows, so many special events planned, and we had to cancel them all within, a week or maybe 2 weeks, which was very sad, but also, was just what was happening all around the country, with performing arts centers having to close their doors, which was very hard for everyone. A lot of my time was honestly just spent trying to figure out, what does it even look like to have a socially distanced show? What does that even mean? And, no one has ever done a socially distanced show before. There wasn't an industry standard. There wasn't any guidance really from the state or from the city. We really just had to figure it out from scratch. But luckily, I wasn't the only one, trying to figure this out. Venue managers all across the country were trying to figure this out. So I spent about 6 months, collaborating with, other venue managers all around the country, just figuring out benchmarks and brainstorming and just, bouncing off each other, figuring out what is safe, what is enjoyable, what is still entertainment, and what is also profitable. A lot of these venues, like my venue right now, we're only open to about 20% right now. And it's at that percentage, it's hard to even break even at that point to keep, operations going. So just figuring out, what does that even look like and how we can do it was a big portion of my 2020. But I also say that it was super enlightening because I had to force myself to just stop working so hard. When we're in season, we're just go, go, go all the time. It's 40 plus hours a week. It's so easy to get burnt out. And in this time, we were just all forced to stay home, and staying home was the safest and the best option for everyone. And with that, I achieved a work-life balance that I've never known before. I I feel like, I say this a lot and I feel guilty, but I really had such a happy year because I just spent so much time just reflecting on myself and exercising and cooking and spending time with my loved ones virtually, and I feel guilty about that because obviously there's just, there are so many lives that were taken and, so many bad things with COVID-19, but that was one positive that I found personally.
I'll say a few things, kind of piggybacking off of what Kiana said. I work for an organization that is a staff of now 4.5. So we're really nimble, and we don't have a large space, and it's also not winterized, and it's so small it was impossible to even have 5 people in the theater, like, which doesn't make any sense. So this kind of like networking on the island and connecting and resource sharing is exactly what came out of this, of like, one of my good friends who happens to be the program director of a farm. We did an entire dance show on a farm outside. We controlled it all, we figured it out. And it really made me want to pull my hair out, but it fulfilled the mission and it really made a lot of people happy. So it's a lot about like, changing your common practices, which leads me to my next point, which is systems change of like, how do you take what has happened? And like, I don't want to use the P word because pivot is really hard, but like, how do you shift to meet more needs and to meet more people and to fulfill your mission? And what does that look like? And how can it change? So I've really enjoyed getting to strategize on that. And how do you make it more equitable? Inclusive is a little bit of a dirty word, but how do you make everyone feel welcome? So yeah, it's an exciting time to shift the industry, to shift audience connection, and to shift the world.
No, I'm so glad you said that. When the pandemic was hitting, when I was still at the Dallas Museum of Art, we had a lot of shows that were open, a lot of shows that I personally worked on and had a lot of investment on that were never going to see the light of day, at least when I was there. And they still perhaps are not, in the same trajectory as before. And so one of the things that I kind of had to do with some of the shows that I was working on is try to figure out how to make them accessible online. And in that way, the Dallas Museum of Art had to reckon with its inaccessibility as a web form online, and see how it wasn't as easy to navigate. Screen readers couldn't navigate them. There wasn't any alternative text on any of the images that we presented on the website. It was not all of the videos had closed captions. So I guess in a really weird way, one of the positive things that came out of this pandemic was that we were forced to review our accessibility standards for a lot of our electronic outputs, which was in a way really good, because if not, I don't think the museum would have had the drive and the money funding behind it to really create all of these changes, which is really wonderful. And it also, for me personally, it was able to equip me with a lot of skills that I didn't have before. And I think as we progress in this digital age, making sure that everyone can access and understand a video that we're putting out, that it has captions on it, that it has a transcript accessible, that it has multilingual opportunities, is very important and will be very applicable in other formats, and hopefully broaden our scope to make people have the same access to this content. So really thinking about how to do online exhibitions, how to do webinars that are accessible, and really take and hone in our digital skills was, I guess, a positive in that regard, which was really exciting. But definitely required a lot of change. We had to anticipate a lot of things that we didn't know. And as folks had said before, resource sharing is really exciting. The Historical Texas Commission has a lot of good webinars, and the Texas Museum connections are very strong and robust in that way. So I'm very grateful to a lot of folks that had figured some things out before we did, and be able to collaborate in that way. It was really exciting.
Thanks for those, guys. Yeah, last year was hard for a lot of reasons, but it's so nice to also hear kind of like the silver linings that come out of these difficult times. So I just have one more question for you all before we go on to the Q&A section from the attendees. And I'm excited about this section because as I'm sitting here, I started to think about how we all went through this program. Like we're all alumni of the undergrad program, like duh. But, you know, it starts to hit you differently when you think like, oh, we all did take the Understanding Creativity class. We all did take all these classes. So the last question is, what are some transferable skills between the program of study that you're in, so arts management, and your work experiences or life experiences so far?
Um, I have to thank Dr. White for telling me and instructing me how to create and run a budget. Um, I I never thought I would have to do it this early in my career, but yeah, it's really really great. I think the entire program lays a foundation for, like, I feel like I really know what a viable organization is and what is one that is inviable. And so I'm able to take those kind of notes and nuances and apply them and you know, and say no to leadership here and that I don't agree with things that are happening. So that has been really helpful. You know, Dr. Chandler's development class has been really helpful now that I work in fundraising. But really the thing is that I work with dancers. So I have a degree in arts administration and I dance on the side, but all of my colleagues are dancers first who happen to now work in arts administration. So I have this really kind of foundational lens at organizational culture and organizations as a whole, from a financial, from a fundraising, from a programmatic standpoint. And so I'm able to apply that and offer feedback to people who are much older than me, who don't have as much experience. So I think that is the greatest aid, but I think it's just a really well-rounded program.
I completely agree with you, Joshua. I mean, the arts management program as a whole is just so incredible. I mean, I've applied, you know, I can't think of a class where I haven't applied, you know, what I learned, you know, 6, 7 years ago today. Everything from financial accounting to grant writing to writing a marketing plan. And as I told you guys earlier, you know, I went from marketing to grant writing to now operations. And if I didn't have such a well-rounded program in my undergraduate year, I don't think I would have been able to have those jobs. But I'm just so grateful that, you know, it included all facets of arts management, because you never know where your path is going to lead you. You might have a life transition where you have to move to another city, another state, and you might have to switch departments. But this program just ensures that you are so well-rounded and ready to go out there into the real world. I think, you know, one of the very first, you know, things that we learn in our intro classes in arts management is what is a mission and what are core values. And that has really stuck with me these past few years that I've been out of college, because an organization's mission and core values, I mean, they really just tell you everything that you need to know. You know, what it's going to be like internally with your coworkers, and what is their mission to the public, to the community, which is what we are as arts managers. We're community managers too. So I love the program. I miss all my professors. I miss all my classmates. But yeah, I'm just so grateful that I had that experience.
Yeah, I'll echo off of that. I personally, for me, I have had to do a lot of grants, surprisingly, in the Dallas Museum of Art. We are a subset of the education department. And typically when you're an institution that large, each department has to do their own grants and kind of fight for their own money in a really weird way. And so I've always, working on those grants in a collaborative process, I always had Dr. Chandler's voice in the back of my mind saying, wordsmith, 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 and just trying to hone in and like really make my case, because no one really teaches you how to do that. And a lot of the folks that were in the education department with me came from artist or from more teacher backgrounds. So none of them had formal training in arts management, which I think is pretty common. And so it was really nice for me to have had all of these classes and to be financially literate in nonprofits and to have all of this training in fundraising and grant writing, because I think for me, I was able to advocate for my coworkers and advocate for the work we did and really understand the importance of doing grants and filling them out as laborious and annoying as they can be sometimes. I really understood how to really craft that language and to make my case for the people who would be reviewing that that grant. And in a weird way, I think it also taught me that there are ways to make certain projects happen if we get the money, if we don't, because if you get buy-in from the rest of your peers in your institution, or if you reach out and you really make your case to some of the local community members, you can still make some facet of the project that you were writing a grant for happen, which I think is the most exciting thing that I learned from Dr. Chandler's class and Chris's class. It was just a phenomenal program in its entirety. I really, as people have said, I really don't think there's a class that I haven't fallen back on and referenced in my line of work.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like I, obviously didn't go to work for an organization, but kind of took a more entrepreneurial route. And what I realized is because of being an arts management major, I had the confidence to go for it, basically, because I had the skills to paint and I was doing all of that, but I had the ability to budget, how to market myself to people and to shows and to galleries. And I took gallery fundamentals, so I knew what galleries were thinking. And I was able to put on a show here in Charleston that I just put together myself. And that was because I took like event planning, and like I feel like all of these skills I learned I was able to then implement into building a business. And because I knew how to do accounting, I knew how to pay my taxes. And it's like the little things like that, where as a artist that only knows studio art, there's only kind of like one direction you can seemingly go in. But because I sort of had this breadth of knowledge, I felt like I could take some steps forward on my own without sort of needing as much help as maybe someone that is only solely doing studio art.
Yeah, I loved listening to all those answers. That's all so good. So thank you all. And I want to switch over to the attendee Q&A session now. And so for the attendees, if you do have any questions, I'd love to invite you to drop them in the chat. So one that we have right here is, what year of college did each of you begin your first internships?
I think my first internship was the summer after my freshman year, I believe. And I was an intern with the Charleston Symphony as an artistic administrative intern. And I helped basically with artistic programming, and it was awesome and I loved it. And after that sophomore year, I took on another internship with the opera department. They had this national conference in, I think it was Cato Building, that me and my best friend, still my best friend today, Emily, we interned together and somehow planned a conference as sophomores in college.
I feel like I started really late. I started out as a music industry concentration, and I quickly decided against it. And I didn't do my first internship until the middle of my second semester of my junior year. And then once I did that, I never actually stopped, even in the summer. So, but I felt like I had to catch up.
Yeah, I started.
I did. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I started my first semester, my sophomore year, if I'm remembering that correctly. And it was actually at the Gibbs Museum, right down the corner of where CFC is, which is exciting. Got to walk there every day for one semester, and I did it as part of my requirement for the arts management program, is you have to have one internship. So that's kind of how I did it. And yeah, once you start, you never really stop because it becomes fun and you have connections and you just want to keep going. So after that, I interned at the Halsey for the next year. I was lucky to do it for 2 semesters in a row. And yeah, you just keep going and making connections. And because it's something that at least something that I really liked interning at museums and really seeing the behind the scenes things. And at the Halsey, you really have the opportunity to help hang works, really understand the mechanics of it in a way that I don't think is available to most things, because it is such a small staffed place that you really have a say in trying out new experiences, and you can decide to do more fundraising kind of things or more behind the scenes in actually hanging or taking down shows. So yeah, I would encourage you guys to take those opportunities if you're interested in the museum world.
And I did my first internship the summer after my sophomore year. And then I did 3 internships in total. So sophomore year during the summer, and then after junior year during the summer, and then 1 during my senior year.
Thanks, guys. So another question that we have is, what advice do you have for freshmen and sophomores? So the people that are just starting out in the arts management program of study, about how to maximize their experience while they're in school.
I would say, as a freshman and sophomore, I feel like, taking time to really get to know your professors is a huge plus. Even, your professors are so busy, right? They're jumping from class to class, but, they might, have time just for a 10-minute coffee and, just for them to know your face and, theirs. Again, just solidifying that bond is just really important. Also just setting, kind of coffee dates, with upperclassmen, graduates or soon to be graduates of the program, and ask them, what has their experience been like and any advice that they can give you. Really just leaning on all of your resources and your peers and the city. We're so unique in that the college is right in the city and you have all these art organizations around you with all these awesome art professionals. And, just because you're in college, on campus doesn't mean you can't reach out to these organizations and set up informational interviews and ask them, how did you get to this job? What do you like about your job? What don't you like about your job? Just using all those resources around you, I think, is really important.
I'll second that. I think the biggest asset to me was actually Dr. Chandler. She was the one that shot opportunities my way. She was the one that advocated for me with her peers and colleagues in the field and in the Charleston scene, which has really kind of catapulted my professional career. But it wouldn't have happened if I wasn't speaking up in class, seeing her in office hours, saying hello. I feel like even by my senior year, I was like always sending her a new copy of my resume. So all of these things are like a part of this kind of like relationship cultivation, and I love her for it. And so also people are willing to pay it forward. So if there are people that you admire in the program, if there are professors that you admire in the work that they do, yeah, go to their office hours, say hello, talk to them after class, all those things that can really set you apart and really just make you a really good candidate.
I totally agree. I think it was Dr. Chandler who encouraged me to apply for my first ever internship at the Gibbs. I don't think I would have had the courage to do so without her input and without her support. I think it really helped, and it was a very important step, I think, in my career. And yeah, professors are so willing to help you and chat with you and really mentor you. That's what they're there for. So you need to really cultivate those relationships. They are wonderful people, they're wonderful professors, but they also themselves as individuals have had amazing careers in the arts. And sometimes I think that we forget that they have done crazy things. And as people have mentioned before, I think it's wonderful that we go to school in Charleston, which has so many different uh, art opportunities in the city that I don't think other universities have that asset. So again, being able to walk to my internship at the Gibbs was a wonderful opportunity as someone who didn't own a car and who lived on campus. So all of these things become super accessible to you as a student. And then just all of the things the city has to offer, right? I think it's good to be really involved, um, going and visiting all the galleries downtown, going to all of the museums, going to shows, taking advantage of Spoleto during the summer. Just attending these events kind of helps you see what you like, what you wouldn't like, and it also helps you network in that way too. So I would say just take advantage of your professors, of your peers, and of the city. It's incredibly lucky that we went to school in such a phenomenal city.
I definitely agree with all of that. I would say that people like your professors, your mentors will recommend people for jobs that they trust. And so be the person that they trust. And to me, that means showing up on time, speaking up, asking questions, being involved. And then like they will know your name. You will have a like friendship relationship with them, and then you will be the person that they go to, that they recommend for a job. And yeah, I just think trust is like the number one thing that is important to build with your professors. And then like, if you have a bad day, if something is going on in your family, like in your life, and you need to talk to them about something, you've already built that trust. So I would say that would be my number one thing.
Totally agreed. Our professors are insanely amazing in this program, and our city is wonderful, and all of these things that you guys said, I echo that completely. So we have a question about changing majors. I think my interpretation of it is that this person would keep arts management, and they have a double major that they want to change from supply chain management, and they want to change it to either accounting or business administration. The question that's being asked is, how have your majors or minor degrees helped you in arts management? So I guess the experiences after graduation.
I'll start and say that a lot of my job is knowing work. So knowing artists, knowing pieces, knowing productions, knowing just like what's happening in the field. And so for me, now that I work in dance administration, I dance on the side and I worked in theater. So I kind of do some producing of movement-based work. And that has been really helpful, just knowing like what's hot, what's not, and things like that. Destiny, kudos to you for doing all of that. I move in full support. The thing that was a really big deal for me was I really wanted a lot of internships, but I still had to pay rent and I still had to pay for school. And so like, I'll name it right now and say that like, that is not everyone's path, because they have to work to pay their bills and do their thing. And it really inhibits them from internship opportunities. But I made sure that I secured support definitively to make sure that I had those experiences, which would set me up for my career. So so not every internship is paid. I did a lot of scut work and did not get paid for it at all. And I'm trying to change that in my own sphere, but it is the current reality. And so I know that CFC offers like internship stipends, which was really helpful. And securing support outside, whether it's through the state or through federal, it was really helpful and really catapulting the career. I guess the last thing is If you know what you want as your end game, see what courses in the program are helpful and supplemental to that information. And if not, maybe you can see if you can take them on your own. Like I actually was a theater minor, or I was a arts administration major and a theater major at the same time. I dropped to a minor, and I actually think I skipped the minor at the very end. So I know a lot about theater, but I actually don't have the minor to go along with it, which is totally fine. People don't ask about it on my resume. I know how to do the things that I need to do, and I know the theater or I know the dance, and I do the work. So I didn't find it as helpful, but it was really good for like background, like general knowledge of the industry itself for me.
Yeah, Destiny, kudos to you because that is an awesome double major. I also didn't know that supply chain management was a major. That's awesome. That's super cool. I personally minored in psychology, and I definitely use a lot of psychology in my job today, just being very patron facing and client facing, learning a lot about organizational commitment, team leadership. So I'm very grateful for my minor in that sense. Sort of like what Josh was saying too, you know, if you have an end goal, an end game, a dream job, you know, I would highly encourage you to look at people who have that dream job and, you know, figuring out what their educational background is. If you have to email them and find out or set up an appointment to talk and ask them, you know, do you regret your accounting minor? Do you wish that you switched over to business administration or vice versa? Then that's a really good way to find out. It's just to reach out to those people that, you know, you want to emulate. To me, just looking at it from the surface, you know, I would say if you want, you know, a very specific job in accounting, then, you know, that's, you know, having an accounting degree would help you do that. But being in the MBA program right now at the Citadel, I will say that I'm learning so much about all aspects of business. You know, I'm learning right now. I'm in ethical leadership. I just finished up corporate finance. I mean, there's so much more to the scope of business that is going to help me in my role today. Because in my role, I have to touch all those areas. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. We have a last question. Did any of you panelists have the concentration in music industry? No.
I started with that actually. I don't know what I was doing at the time, but I was like, I want to work for a record label when I was like stepping on the, you know, into my dorm for the first time. That quickly changed after I took the first class, but that was the path that I know I did not want to take. So if it's something that you'd like, I encourage you to stay in it. And if there is no kind of bridge to like where you want to go, the first thing I did in that regard for my career was like, who do I talk to? You know, who can you connect me with? And then just go from there. But yeah, after the first class, I did not continue.
Thanks, Josh. And I will also add, I was not a music industry concentration either, but I did take one of the music industry concentration classes just for fun. And I think those classes are fun. They're just like, you know, you get to delve into the music. The one that I took was specifically looking at the history of pop music. So I thought it was super exciting. And I'll also say that I'm going to look around for a music industry concentration alumni that I can link you with. So I'll keep your name, Blair, in my little agenda book. So we're right at like an hour, and I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. So a big thank you to our panelists for participating in the discussion. Thank you so much. You've been a wonderful resource to our current students. And also congratulations, because you're all doing such exciting and amazing things. And I've truly enjoyed listening to you throughout the panel discussion. Thank you as well to those of you who joined us today for this panel discussion. A couple of reminders before you log off. Our second alumni panel featuring alumni of the Graduate Certificate in Arts and Cultural Management is next week, same time, same Zoom link, so same place. I also want to say that Dr. Chandler's fundraising and grant writing in the arts guest speaker series will continue tonight at 7 p.m. with Rachel Dweingarten Workman, who is the finance manager and administrator of the City of Charleston's Office of Cultural Affairs. I'm going to go ahead and drop the Zoom link to the guest speaker series. And I want to make sure to follow the Arts Management Program on Facebook and Instagram so that you can keep up with our current events. It's at COC_ARTM. And so I think that is all. Thank you so much, everybody, and I hope you have a great day.
Good luck, guys.
Thank you.
Good luck.